Goose look like a furry chicken?
Yes.
Yeah. That's
Does
the
he look
vibe.
cute?
That's the vibe I'm getting.
So cute.
Okay.
Furry chicken.
Hello and welcome to part 2 of our birth story. So now we're going to talk a little bit about when the pandemic hit, where we were in our pregnancy, and sort of how we handled day-to-day life after that, up until the birth. So where were we when we found out about the pandemic? We actually were in Toronto, right?
Yeah.
When
February.
It wasn't in the US yet, but it was happening. We were in Toronto, and I actually remember freaking out a little bit and thinking that maybe the borders would close, like close between Canada and the US, and that we wouldn't be able to get back to the US where all of our stuff is and our beautiful OBs are where our wonderful OBs are.
They're so beautiful.
Don't. We made it back home to New York City.
We had a baby shower lined up. We had a bunch of events. We canceled everything early March, and everyone thought we were totally crazy because the first case, I think, had hit Washington State maybe that week, and we were just taking a very cautious approach because Christine was pregnant, and we just assumed it was worse than what we were being told.
I feel like we knew it was going to be bad. So anyway, we canceled everything. We didn't have a baby shower. We were canceling just like all social events, basically. Yeah, and people did think we were a little nuts, but then we were not in the end.
And then I got a call from a colleague / friend on I think March 10th, who former army guy who was pretty plugged into the military still, and he basically told me
it was not reassuring.
he told me to get out of New York City, that the army was thinking of sealing off Manhattan because at this point it was the epicenter. It was becoming the epicenter of the pandemic.
He said
food lines were being disrupted.
Shut off.
Yeah.
There were mass graves being dug in China.
Yeah, and by the way, this was at a point when those shelves on Whole Foods were empty.
Oh yeah.
So it was terrifying. So the next day, I think it was March 11th. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I'd stopped going to work.
Yeah.
And one of my colleagues who has a home in like Eastern Long Island basically said, yeah, he was paranoid as well, and he basically said, look, if you guys want to,
he was like, I know you're pregnant.
Yeah, if you guys like want to come here for a bit, you're very welcome to. And we were at first like, oh, appreciate the invite, but
like, thank you so much. And then you got the call, and then I was like, we're going.
Yeah.
So we went. And we
went immediately.
Took everything, and we thought we kind of packed for like a week or so.
Yeah.
But we ended up being there for what, 2 months?
No, 1 month.
A month. Which disrupted plans for everything we had, because were we in our 3rd trimester at that point? We were in our 3rd trimester. We had planned to come back and create our nursery, do 1 million doctor's appointments, all of our prep that we had planned for the months leading up to our birth. We could not do because we had escaped. We had fled the city, and talking with our OBs, like everything moved to telemedicine as much as possible. So we had our own little like home office or home doctor's office kit. We got a scale, a blood pressure monitor, a Doppler. Is that what they're called?
Yeah, to listen to the heartbeat.
Yeah, so we can listen to the baby. Pee sticks. We got the whole show. We got it all. What are they called? Pee sticks?
Sure.
Like, you pee and then you test your pee. Talking with our doctors, they basically told us to cancel all the support that we had planned. We were not allowed to have anyone in our home. We were told to start prepping for birth in place, which is basically a home birth, which I am totally not okay with. I know that this is actually a part of many people's birth plans, but certainly not mine, and certainly not ours. And that was a bad time when I thought that might happen, right?
Yeah.
With regards to our actual birth plan, I had elected for a gentle C-section with our OBs who do this. It is where it's a C-section, but they make it a little bit more, I don't know, holistic, natural as possible. So if you want, you can have a clear curtain so that you can see the birth of the baby. You can actually have your baby do skin to skin with you straight away, which is part of the gentle C-section, which means they put all the monitors, the sticky little things, on your back or like different places. I think there's usually like a little oxygen monitor or something that goes on your finger, and I think that they can put on your ear, so that there's like little things that you can do to make it a gentle C-section and a more positive experience, I guess. Also, your partner is with you as well, which is great in this plan of ours that we had. The reason why I elected for a C-section instead of a vaginal birth is just because, honestly, ever since I knew about giving birth, it just wasn't for me. I just knew it wasn't for me. I knew it wasn't for some reason. I just felt that that was the choice that I wanted to make for my body, and I'm happy with that decision. But because of this pandemic, there was new things happening every day. We were told that, like, don't worry about it because you're giving birth in whatever it is, I think it was 2 months or like 1.5 months.
A month and a half.
Yeah, so they were like, you're giving birth in 1.5 months, so by then everything's gonna be sorted with this COVID, coronavirus, whatever it is, so you don't have to worry about it. As we know, that is totally wrong. And we ended up giving birth actually right at the height of the pandemic, being in New York City. Manhattan was very much the epicenter of the epicenter at the very moment we gave birth, which was nuts. So one of the things that we found out about as we got closer and closer to our birth was that the hospital that we planned to give birth at, Mount Sinai East, they were absolutely not letting any partners in no matter what. So that was really not okay for us, especially because I was having a C-section, so I feel like everyone needs support, basically. Whatever way you're giving birth, it's extremely inhumane to make someone go through that alone without their partner. I just feel like with me and Mark, we do everything as a team. We plan everything together. We plan this birth together. So it's like, you can't just take one half of that plan away, right?
Yeah.
So we were, anyways.
Luckily, our OBs practice at Mount Sinai and at Metropolitan, which is the public hospital in Harlem, right?
Yeah, East Harlem, I think.
Yeah. So, and because they're a public hospital, their policies were not as quickly implemented as Mount Sinai, and so that hospital hadn't changed any of their partner policies, so I was still allowed to be in the hospital when Christine gave birth, but I could not be in the OR, only in the recovery room. And then there were limits. Actually, at that point, there were limits on when I could be in, which was 6 a.m. until 9 p.m., but that was still better than nothing. So we decided that even though it was a pretty big change of plan, that it made the most sense for us. It was more important that I was in the room with Christine than it was for Christine to give birth at Mount Sinai, and so we pivoted and went to Metropolitan probably a week before Christine was due.
Which meant that, we still had our OBs with us, and they were going to be able to help us deliver, but because it's a different hospital, Hey
buddy, it's just Willa.
It's just Willa. It's just Willa. We still had our OBs, but because they usually give birth at Mount Sinai East, and that's where they do everything with regards to the gentle C, and Metropolitan, they have birthing privileges there, but it's like they don't really go there a lot. They let us know that we would still have, a respectful C-section, but it wouldn't be the full thing. So, I didn't get the skin to skin. I wouldn't, Mark couldn't be there in the OR with us. Just little, it was basically just a regular, it was going to be a little bit more of a regular C-section, but with our lovely OBs.
Shortly before we came back into the city, I was still doing the partner meetups, but we were doing it over Zoom. And this was after our OBs had told us that we can't have a night nurse or any of the support network that we were planning on having. And I mentioned that to one of the guys on the Zoom his kid was probably 9 months old at that time, and his reaction was like, "You're insane." Our families were both in Canada, so the border was shut, so our parents couldn't come down, so we lost that. Our doula,
they wouldn't even be allowed anyway because of quarantine.
Our doula couldn't because she was obviously with a bunch of different families, and that was just too high risk. And then the night nurse, our OBs said not to. So, but the reason they said not to is because she would be traveling. And so what this guy on the line said is he had this crazy reaction. He's like, you guys are gonna really regret it. You need to find help, find a way to make it work. Like, just figure it out. I'm telling you, you're not gonna regret it. And that really resonated with us. And so
we jumped into action. We so gratefully found out that there was a studio apartment upstairs, literally on the floor above us, for rent, that you could rent by the month, which is that doesn't even happen really. That doesn't even
only
exist
because
anymore.
it was the pandemic and everyone had left the city, and it was cheap and it was available.
Yeah.
And so we were able to rent that out and have our night nurse move in here for 2 months.
So our doctors were like, if she quarantines for 2 weeks and then moves in with you, and basically that's moving in with us, then they would be okay with it. And so that's the way we were able to have our night nurse with us, which was really nice, and we're so grateful for. So that's the end of part 2 of our birth story with Willa. Check out part 3 for more.